Welcome. Today we're going to explore Gene Key 22 or any planetary placements that you might have in your birth chart in the sign of Pisces between 17 degrees and 22.3 degrees. You will resonate with this video if you have the Gene Key 22 in a prominent place in your profile, or if you have personal planets in this placement in Pisces, like the Sun, the Moon, Venus, or even Mars. Mars is a quiet placement there. So without further ado, thank you for joining the Self Journey channel, and let's begin. This is the path from suffering to grace, a journey that awaits for you through emotional alchemy. Have you ever wondered why some people seem to carry deep emotional burdens, as if they're walking through life with a heavy heart, yet somehow radiate wisdom and compassion? If that resonates, you might be carrying Gene Key 22 in your chart. This placement is unlike any other. It carries the story of emotional suffering, not as a curse, but as a calling. It's the story of learning to transmute emotional pain into divine grace. And of course, this transformation is not instant, but you'll earn it through heartbreak, loss, through feeling everything more deeply than others. But this is also where your gifts start, so don't be discouraged. It is the path of emotional alchemy, the path from dishonor to graciousness and finally to grace. Let's begin with a shadow. The shadow is pretty subtle. It's not about dishonoring others in the typical sense. It's about how we dishonor our own emotional truth. Those who carry this gene key or this placement often grow up feeling too much, being told they're too sensitive, too emotional, you're too dramatic. So what do? You start suppressing. You start bottling things up and you keep your pain quiet. Or, on the flip side, you become explosive. The emotions build up like pressure in a volcano, and one small, tiny trigger can cause an emotional eruption. And that is dishonor. Dishonor can manifest as suppressed, like when you suppress your feeling until they numb you, or projected, when you project your feelings outwards in pain, or blame, that's a famous one, or rage. I'm going to give you examples so you can ground what you learn about this gene key along the way. Imagine a child who cries easily, who senses the moods of the room. That is you, of course. Who knows when something is off, even if no one says anything. This child, unfortunately, might be scolded, right? Stop crying, toughen up, don't be oversensitive. And with other kids, it might work. But for you who have this particular placement and gene key, you start to disconnect from your emotional truth. And that's where dishonor begins. It begins when you stop trusting your own emotional reality And this leads to two patterns: either emotional shutdown, where you become numb, overly independent, disconnected from your heart, or emotional reactivity, where you lash out, blame others, or stay in victimhood because life feels unfair. So people with this placement can often feel cursed in their early life. They may ask, why do I suffer so much? Why does no one understand how I feel? Why do I care so deeply about things other people ignore? But this isn't a punishment, I promise you. It's just a part of your spiritual training. Because until you honor your emotions, you cannot access your gift. At the shadow level, Gene Key 22, or the planet, in this placement can express the energy of dishonor, a dishonoring of our own emotional reality. But here's the nuance. This shadow doesn't look the same in everyone. Depending on your emotional patterning, your upbringing, or your personality, it can show up in two different ways. The first one, the repressive nature, quote to quote, proper. So this is the person who learned to hide their feelings completely, to be, quote to quote, proper, polite, controlled, emotionally distant, pleasant on the surface. These people often believe if I show my emotions, I'll be seen as weak. If I lose control, I'll be judged. So they keep everything locked inside. But this emotional suppression isn't peaceful. It's frozen. They may appear calm or even spiritual on the outside, but inside there's a build-up of unprocessed grief, sadness, rage, or longing. These people are often the ones who say, I'm fine, even when they're not. Or who smile in group settings but cry alone at night. They dishonor themselves by denying the full spectrum of their emotional life. And over time, this niceness becomes a prison. And the gift of graciousness cannot bloom in a frozen heart. The other nature is the reactive nature, or the inappropriate. On the other end of the spectrum, we have the reactive expression, and those people will feel everything. They let everyone know it. They may lash out emotionally, feel easily offended, carry a sense of entitlement to express their pain loudly without filters. Their reactions can seem dramatic, chaotic, or out of proportion. But underneath all that fire is the same wound, a deep feeling of being emotionally unseen or unsafe. So their pain becomes a weapon and their reactivity becomes a shield. They dishonor themselves not by hiding their emotions, but by using them to control, manipulate, or punish others. So you might be one of these two natures for most of the time, but also know that you will dance between these two natures, the repressive and the reactive ones, when you are in your shadow period, of course. So the repressive hides their heart and the reactive throws their heart at the world, hoping someone will catch it. But the one walking the path of Gene Key 22 is meant to learn to honor their own heart, not to hide it, nor to throw it outside and wait for someone to catch it. Your path is to feel deeply without drowning, to express emotions without projecting, to respond rather than control or react. And when you start doing that, that's when the gift of graciousness begins to emerge. You might feel sometimes emotionally isolated, like you have to carry everything on your own, right? But your emotional depth is not your weakness. It's your superpower. You are one of the purest souls. You are chosen to have this mission because you can. It's not meant for everyone. You have a superpower. And once you stop numbing or reacting, once you begin feeling without judging, you begin your transformation into something utterly beautiful. You begin to embody the gift of graciousness. Now we're going to explore how emotional presence becomes your greatest strength, and how graciousness turns you into a healer through silence, and how real compassion doesn't come from being soft, but from having survived the storms of your heart. When you stop dishonoring your emotional truth, when you stop numbing and blaming and hiding, something begins to open inside you. A shift inside you will happen. It's subtle at first, like a whisper, but eventually it becomes your way of life. And graciousness is not about smiling through pain. It's not about being polite or fake. I'll give you the definition of graciousness. Graciousness is the ability to be fully present with your own emotions and with the emotions of others without judgment. That is graciousness. It's when you've been through so much emotional intensity that you no longer react. You respond. You no longer try to fix others, but rather you hold space for others. I'm going to say the definition again. It is your ability to be fully present with your own emotions and with the emotions of others without judgment. So it starts with you. It starts with self-compassion, self-love, holding space for our own emotions so we can do the same for others. And when you are at a place where you see yourself not trying to fix others anymore, to blame others anymore, but rather you start holding space for others, you know that you're tapping into your gift. And let's be clear, graciousness doesn't mean you don't feel pain. It means that you've learned to feel pain, but you feel it gracefully, with maturity, with softness and presence. Another practical example. let's say your partner is having a bad day, right? And they snap at you. In the shadow state, you might snap back. You might say, why are you always so moody, for example? Or if you are more of a repressive nature type of person, you might internalize it, feel the hurt, shut down, and, like just keeping it inside and say that you're fine. But if you want to choose graciousness next time this example happens in your life, you pause, you breathe, you recognize that their words are not really about you. You're able to listen, not because they're right, but because you understand pain so much that you can understand where he comes from. And right there, you can respond rather than react. And by responding, you are more soft. You can say, I can feel you're overwhelmed right now. I'm here if you need to talk. You hold space. You don't get offended. And you know it's not about you. But you also know that he is in pain, and that's why he's lashing out. And you've known this pain. You've known it before with yourself. You lived it, so now you can feel it when somebody else is having his moment. You held space for yourself before, so now you can offer it. Imagine you say that. What will your partner respond to you? I bet he's either gonna cry, come give you a hug, or say nothing, but he feels seen and appreciated. The way when you were a baby, you weren't, unfortunately, feeling that. And that is emotional mastery. That is graciousness in action. Another practical example. If a child is throwing a tantrum, not because he's bad or anything, but because, he has a little nervous, like his little nervous system is maybe flooded. He can't take it anymore. As a mom, graciousness doesn't scold or silence, or as a dad. Graciousness gets on their level, looks into their eyes, and says, it's okay to feel upset. I'm right here. Let it out. And we can all say these words. We can learn to say these words, right? But the baby will not calm down unless you really feel his pain. And you look him in the eyes and you hold his hand, and your vibration, your presence will make him feel safe. And this is when he will stop. Your presence becomes healing, and that's your gift if you have this gene key. The child calms not because they're told to, but because they are felt. This gift is the medicine. You are the emotional alchemist. Those who carry this gene key or this placement in their birth chart, they're meant to become emotional alchemists. You take raw emotion, yours or others, you hold it gently until it transforms. You begin to notice that you can sit with people in their grief without trying to save them. You start to find beauty in tears, wisdom in silence, and comfort in simply being present. Simply by holding your emotions. Next time you feel any feeling, don't try to run from it. Acknowledge it, sit with it, let it be. And I promise you, it'll go away. Feelings are not meant to stay unless you don't deal with them. Sit with your emotions. And after you sit with it, you accept it. Now you know what it feels like. And this is when the gift and the shift starts happening from the inside. When you go to comfort a person, automatically you feel their pain. You've been there before, and you don't need to do anything. Your presence alone is a healing. You become the kind of person others come to. Not because you have answers, not because you know how to talk, because your energy is safe. That is your mission. You listen without interrupting. You hug without the need to fix. You speak only when your words can elevate. You honor the sacredness of human emotion, and when you do, you begin to radiate something beyond emotional intelligence. It's called grace. And I want you to take a moment here and reflect. Who in your life has held space for you in this way? Can you remember a moment where someone's calm presence changed everything? And now, can you begin offering the same presence to yourself? Because it all starts with you. This is the truth of the gift. Before you hold space for others, you must learn to hold space for you. Graciousness begins with self-compassion. And the gift of this placement is subtle. You won't always be praised for it. But you were chosen for many reasons. One of them, you can carry this burden at the shadow level. You are able to do it. And second, you are so pure that you will arrive to a place where you don't need to be praised for what you do. You just do it because it's the right thing. So yes, this gift is not about being praised. In fact, many people may not even realize the power of what you're doing. but slowly your presence begins to change lives. Your energy becomes the healer. Your silence becomes the treatment. And that is when you begin to embody emotional nobility. You become a quiet force of love. And when you become that, you start to tap in the siddhi, which is the highest vibration of this placement or this gene key, which is grace. After the pain, after the emotional chaos, after learning to honor your own feelings and to hold space for others with dignity, something shifts. Because you finally made enough space within yourself to receive it. This is the siddhi of grace. Grace is not a mood, it's an attitude. It's not about being graceful in how you move or speak. It's a state of divine being. It's what happens when your ego dissolves, and what remains is a radiant, unconditional presence, one that holds all of life in its arms without resistance. Quoting Richard Rudd, "Grace descends, it's never chased. You do not attain the siddhis, they attain you." And I think this is especially true of grace. You cannot chase it. You cannot force it. You cannot perform your way into it. You simply open your heart, you soften, you surrender, you release your need to be seen, to be right, to be understood. And suddenly grace fills you like a warm light. It moves through you every time you do it, every time you feel it. You feel this warm light that moves through you, not for your glory, but for the benefit of all beings. What a mission. It's not easy, but know that you are chosen. It's not meant for everyone. When you enter the siddhi of grace, words become unnecessary. You stop trying to fix people. You begin to understand that healing doesn't come from advice, at least for you, right? It doesn't come from solutions or teachings, not your mission. Healing for you comes from presence. You will heal people, but it's not going to be through advice or teaching. It's going to be through your presence. From the feeling of being unconditionally accepted in your most broken moment, that's when you become a healer. When you make people feel this safety, this acceptance. When you stop having agendas and start doing it just because you can. You become someone whose aura alone can calm a storm. You can walk into a room and shift the emotional temperature without saying a word. And I'm getting tears here. This is so beautiful. And I also have a kid who has this gene key, and it's definitely true. Gene key 22, or any placement here, is tied very closely to the divine feminine. Not in a gender way, but we're talking as an energetic force. It's the energy of the sacred mother, of compassion, of stillness, of forgiveness. And Richard Rudd says that it's the energy of Mary Magdalene, the energy that holds the wounded child in her arms and says, I will love you through this. It's the energy that forgives not because it should, but because it sees through the illusion of separation. Because it knows that you are me and I am you. That we are not separate beings and that we come from one source. So if you carry this placement or this gene key, I do understand that this is not an easy path, but it is sacred. You are here to help us all evolve emotionally. And you're not here to do it by preaching or controlling, right? You are here to help humanity evolve emotionally by being the space into which pain and sorrow and sadness can dissolve. And all this happens when you shed your last tear of resistance, when you start surrendering. Then all what's left is love. It may sound poetic, and it may sound one of, as Mary Magdalene, like somebody who is an exception, someone who's an exception. But believe me, those who carry this gene key can be this person. And I understand that it's not a linear path, and we all can stumble and fall down. But the important thing is to remember that this is your mission. Whatever you do in your life, keep that in the backdrop. And you will help humanity. We need you. In fact, this gene key is deeply connected to karma. Every act of graciousness, every moment of presence, every time you hold space for another's pain without judgment, you are helping to clear the collective emotional field. You are transmuting ancestral pain. You're burning away generational wounds. And how you're doing it, not with fire, with water. That's why it's Pisces. It's the water element. You're doing it with stillness, with tears, with feelings. And the more of us who awaken to this frequency, even if you don't have this gene key, maybe you're not meant to do it. But if you can embody this gene key, the more of us who awaken to this frequency, the more the world softens, the more forgiveness flows, and the more we begin to remember the truth. And the truth is that grace is our true nature, and that we are not separate. So, if you've ever felt too emotional, too intense, if you ever felt too much, if you've carried heavy emotions without knowing why, if your life has felt like a series of emotional initiations, now you know why. And I want you to know this. You are not broken. You are not cursed. Definitely not cursed. And you are a vessel. You were born to transmute pain into light. This is your path. From the shadow of dishonor to the gift of graciousness, to the divine embodiment of grace. You are not here to escape your emotions. You are here to sanctify them. And in doing so, you help all of humanity move one step closer to the divine. So thank you. And thank you for listening. I hope this was helpful.